Good morning and welcome to today's webinar on working safely with coronavirus. My name is Andy Harrison and I work at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. This webinar offers guidance to help employers, employees and the self-employed working in offices and contact centres to understand how to work safely during the coronavirus pandemic. A quick housekeeping point before we start. There are controls at the bottom of your screen to pause the session and for adjusting video quality and sound. You can ask questions during the webinar by selecting the Q&A symbol on the right-hand side of your screen. Type in your question in the compose box and then selecting send. However, as every business is different, we can't answer questions or give individual advice on exactly how you should implement the guidance in your specific circumstances. But we can collect your feedback and input on how useful the guidance is for your business and areas we might want to develop in future iterations. A recording of the webinar and links to useful information will be circulated to all participants later today. So the purpose of today's webinar is to give you a practical framework to think about what you need to do to continue or restart operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. To help you do this, guidance for businesses has been prepared by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, with input from firms, from unions, industry bodies, and the devolved administrations in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, and in consultation with Public Health England and the Health and Safety Executive. This guidance applies to England. The links to this guidance and for the guidance for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, search for Working Safely During Coronavirus on gov.uk. We expect that this guidance will be updated over time, so you should check for updates at www.gov.uk/working safely. Each business will need to translate this guidance into the specific actions it needs to take, depending on the nature of the business, including the size and type of business, how it's organised, operated, managed and regulated. You could also consider any advice that's been produced specifically for your sector, for example, by your trade association or trade unions. And to note that the guidance does not supersede any legal obligations relating to health and safety, employment or equalities. As well as providing guidance to businesses on working safely during coronavirus, the government is supporting businesses and their employees with a package of measures during this period of unprecedented disruption. The Coronavirus Business Support Hub brings together all government guidance on running your business. To visit the hub, search Business Support on gov.uk. There you can use the Business Support Finder tool on gov.uk to see what support is available for you and your business. Answer 9 simple questions to receive a list of the support your business may be entitled to. Gov.uk is where you will also find written guidance to help employers, employees and the self-employed understand how to work safely during the coronavirus pandemic. 8 guides have been published covering a range of different types of work. Now, many businesses operate more than one type of workplace, such as an office or a factory or a fleet of vehicles. You may need to use more than one of the guides as you think through what you need to do to keep people safe. You can view all the written guidance at www.gov.uk/working safely. Further guidance will be published as more businesses are able to reopen. So today's webinar is designed to be relevant for people who work in or run offices, contact centres and similar environments. This webinar will help you understand the COVID-19 safer working guidelines for offices and contact centres and the steps businesses need to take. It is for individual businesses to apply these guidelines to their specific nature and layout of their premises. So I'm delighted today to be joined by Margaret Haig, who will provide an overview of the offices and contact centre guidance. Today we will cover how you might assess and manage risk, who should go to work, how to enable social distancing at work, managing non-staff at your workplace, including customers, visitors and contractors, how to reinforce your cleaning measures due to reduced transmission risks, PPE and coverings in your workplace, managing and communicating with your workplace, and handling inbound and outbound goods. Margaret, over to you.
Thank you, Andy. I'll begin with risk, as that's really where this all begins. As an employer, you have a legal responsibility to protect your workers and others from risks to their health and safety. A risk assessment is part of how you control risks in your workplace, and you can use the guidance produced by the government to help you conduct the risk assessment and put appropriate preventative measures in place. All employers should consult their workers on health and safety. The Health and Safety Executive have useful tools and guidance on conducting a risk assessment, including templates. So employers have a duty to reduce workplace risks by taking preventative measures, as we've said. In the context of coronavirus, this means increasing hand washing and cleaning of surfaces, working from home where possible, and where this is not possible, maintaining 2 meters social distancing. Where maintaining social distancing isn't possible, considering whether these specific activities should continue. If they should, you should put in place preventative measures that I will cover in more detail later in this presentation. Remember that no one is obliged to work in an unsafe environment. So we'll move on to who should go to work. It's important for employers, employees and the self-employed to understand how to return to work safely during this coronavirus pandemic, both for employers to feel confident that they are protecting the well-being of their workers and for workers to feel confident that they are being protected at work. Before deciding who should come to work, it's important that you have conducted a risk assessment with your employees and you have considered the following. What functions are vital for the business to operate and which functions can be suspended until a future time? What creative solutions can be adopted to help employees to work from home? How many workers do you need on site at any one time to make the business functional? How are you going to cater for the needs of vulnerable workers? Remember, everyone should continue to work from home if possible. Many office workers are currently doing so really successfully. It's important that businesses monitor the well-being of those working from home and keep in touch with off-site workers on their working arrangements, providing equipment such as remote access to work systems. If people cannot do their work from home, use your risk assessment to inform the changes to make your office COVID-19 secure and consider the individual needs of your employees. It's really important to remember that clinically extremely vulnerable individuals should not physically go to work. Those are people who are shielding. Individuals who have symptoms of COVID-19, as well as those who live in a household with someone who has symptoms, should not physically go into work. Clinically vulnerable individuals who are at higher risk of severe illness should be helped to work from home where possible. If they cannot work from home, they should take extra care with social distancing. Their work should be considered carefully as part of the risk assessment. In applying this guidance, employers should also consider the needs of those with protected characteristics. It is breaking the law to discriminate, directly or indirectly, against anyone because of a protected characteristic. As a reminder, these are age, disability, sex, ethnicity, gender reassignment, sexual orientation, marriage and civil partnership status, religion or belief, and pregnancy and maternity. Employers should consider how to ensure that existing reasonable adjustments for employees with disabilities are COVID-19 secure, Think about health and safety risks for new or expectant mothers, and the impacts of shift patterns and measures brought in by the guidance on those with caring responsibilities and religious commitments. So one of the main points in the guidance is about social distancing. You must maintain social distancing in the workplace wherever possible. This means maintaining 2 meters social distance wherever possible. Where the social distancing guidelines cannot be followed in full in relation to a particular activity, businesses should first consider whether that activity needs to continue for the business to operate, as we mentioned before. If so, businesses should take all the mitigating actions possible to reduce the risk of transmission between their staff. I'll now go into more detail about what mitigating actions might look like in various scenarios, starting with arriving at and departing from work and when travelling between sites. Remember, social distancing applies to all parts of a business, not just the place where people spend most of their time. When thinking about social distancing and hygiene for staff coming to and leaving work, you should consider staggering arrival and departure times, introducing multiple entry points to larger offices to reduce congestion, introducing one-way flow into and out of the site, providing additional bike racks to help people walk, run or cycle to work, reduce maximum lift capacity, providing hand washing or hand sanitizing facilities, and defining process alternatives for entry or exit points. For example, deactivating turnstiles requiring pass checks in favour of showing a pass to security personnel at a distance. Additional measures should also be taken to maintain social distancing when moving around buildings and work sites, such as restricting access to some areas and encouraging the use of radios or phones to discourage non-essential trips, reducing the maximum occupancy for lifts, providing hand sanitizer for the operation of lifts and encouraging the use of stairs, and also regulating the use of high traffic areas. Social distancing must be maintained when individuals are at their workstations. In the context of offices and call centres, the workstation will often be a desk, of course. Workstations and desks should be assigned to an individual where possible and not shared. You should avoid hot desks if you can. Where workstations do need to be shared, for example in call centres or training facilities, you should clean and sanitize between different occupants, including shared equipment. If they need to be shared, then workstations should also be shared by the smallest possible number of people. To maintain social distancing between individuals, when they are at their desk or workstation, you should arrange layouts and processes to maintain 2 meter distances. You can use floor tape or paint to mark areas to help workers keep to a 2 meter distance. An example is shown on the slide. Where it is not possible to change layouts to create 2 meter distance, you should arrange for people to work side by side or facing away from each other, rather than face to face, or think about installing screens. You should also think about managing occupancy levels so that people can maintain 2 meter distance. It is important to maintain social distancing and reduce the risk of transmission in meetings and common areas. Remote working tools should be used to avoid in-person meetings. Only necessary participants should attend in-person meetings, and they should maintain 2 meter separation throughout. You might need to rearrange or remove furniture and use signage and markings to help people maintain social distancing. To avoid transmission during meetings, avoiding sharing pens and other objects, provide hand sanitizer, and hold meetings in well-ventilated rooms or outdoors whenever possible. When thinking about common areas, Work collaboratively in multi-tenant sites to ensure consistency across common areas like receptions. Stagger break times. Use outside areas. Provide packaged meals or similar to avoid fully opening staff canteens. Use protective screens for staff. Provide packaged meals. And reconfigure seating and tables to maintain social distancing and reduce face-to-face interactions. These images show measures to prevent transmission in common areas and meetings. The first image demonstrates how to aid social distancing and aid hygiene in meetings. You can see the sanitizer set out there. The second image shows how the layouts of common areas could change to maintain social distancing by blocking off certain seating, for example. The third image shows markings in a kitchen to control staff numbers at any one time and to maintain appropriate distances. So as well as thinking about your staff, you should minimise the number of unnecessary visits to offices by customers, visitors and contractors. This can be achieved by encouraging visits via remote connection, limiting the number of visitors at any one time and maintaining a record of visitors where practical, and determining if schedules for essential services and contractor visits can be revised to reduce interaction, for example, carrying out services at night. Businesses should also make sure people understand what they need to do to maintain safety. They should provide clear guidance on social distancing and hygiene for visitors and establish host responsibilities relating to COVID-19. You should provide any necessary training for people who act as hosts for visitors. You should also review entry and exit routes for visitors and contractors in order to reduce interaction. If you work in shared facilities with other businesses, then coordinate these with other occupiers. I'll now move on to look at cleaning in the workplace. You should carry out cleaning procedures before reopening any site or location that has been closed or partially open. You should carry out an assessment for all sites that have been closed and providing cleaning procedures and hand sanitizer before restarting work. Check whether you need to service or adjust ventilation systems. Most air conditioning systems will not need adjustment. Once reopened, workplaces should be kept clean to prevent transmission by touching contaminated surfaces. This will require frequent cleaning of work areas and equipment and of objects and surfaces touched regularly. Frequently clean high-touch items like door handles and keyboards. You should also think about how you can limit or restrict the use of high-touch items like printers and whiteboards. Workspaces should be kept clear and waste and belongings removed at the end of a shift. Good hygiene should be maintained by everyone throughout the working day. Signs and posters can be used to build awareness. Hand sanitizer should be provided in multiple locations in addition to washrooms. Where shower and changing facilities are required, businesses should set clear use and cleaning guidance to ensure they are kept clean and clear of personal items, and that social distancing is achieved as much as possible. Introducing enhanced cleaning should also be considered during and at the end of the day. Where objects come into the workplace, such as goods, merchandise and materials, think about your cleaning procedures. This may require cleaning procedures being implemented for shared equipment, encouraging increased hand washing and regularly cleaning vehicles that workers take home. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, protects the user against health or safety risks at work. If you are already using PPE equipment to protect against non-COVID-19 risks, you should continue to do so. Additional PPE beyond what you usually wear is not required to protect against COVID-19. This is because COVID-19 is a different type of risk that can be managed through the steps we are discussing today. There may be circumstances where wearing face coverings may be marginally beneficial, such as when working in enclosed spacing. However, this should not be at the expense of other ways of managing risk, i.e. personal hygiene. Wearing a face covering is optional and not required by law. When thinking about workforce management, your objective should be to change the way work is organised to reduce the number of contacts each employee has. Where people are split into teams or shift groups, fixing these groups is advised so that where contact happens, this takes place between the same people. You should identify areas where people must directly pass things to each other, e.g. office supplies, and ways to remove direct contact such as drop-off zones should be implemented. Work-related travel should also be minimised in the first instance, but where it is essential, the number of people travelling together should be minimised with travel partners fixed and shared vehicles cleaned between shifts or on handover, and minimise contact during payments and exchange of documentation, such as by using electronic payment methods and electronically signed and exchanged documents. Communication and training will help your workers understand and keep up to date with the safety measures you are implementing. All workers should understand COVID-19 related safety procedures and be provided with clear, consistent and regular communication. Visual communications can be really helpful. There should also be increased awareness and focus on the importance of mental health during times of uncertainty. Ongoing engagement with workers and worker representatives will help you to monitor and understand any unforeseen impacts. Remember to provide communication and training materials prior to returning to work. Finally, remember to implement social distancing and steps to avoid surface transmission when goods enter and leave sites. There are a number of steps that may be needed, including revising pick-up and drop-off collection points, minimising unnecessary contact at gatehouse security or warehouses, reducing the frequency of deliveries, having single workers load or unload vehicles where safe to do so, using the same pairs of people for loads where more than one is needed, enabling drivers to access welfare facilities, and encouraging drivers to stay in their vehicles where this does not compromise safety and existing safe working practices. So that ends my overview of the guidance. More detail can be found in the full written documents. Thank you for listening, and I'll now hand back to Andy.
Thank you for that really helpful overview, Margaret. So before we move on and look at some case studies and tackle some questions on the safer working guidance, I wanted to outline some of the wider steps that the government's taken to help people travel to work, and on the opening of nurseries, schools and colleges, steps that will also help people return to the workplace. As of Monday, the 1st of June, primary schools in England are welcoming back children in reception, Year 1 and Year 6. Nurseries and other early year providers will also begin welcoming back children of all ages. Secondary schools, sixth forms and colleges will also provide face-to-face contact for Year 10, Year 12 and the equivalent 16 to 19-year-old further education students to help them prepare for exams next year. It is expected that this will begin from the 15th of June, with around a quarter of those secondary students in at any point. The latest information on the phased reopening of schools can be found at gov.uk. Safe travel guidance is also available, and you should share this with your workforce to help them plan their travel to work during the coronavirus outbreak. Everybody should avoid using public transport where possible, and instead try to walk, cycle or drive. Thinking carefully about the times, routes and ways your employees travel will also mean we will all have more space to stay safe. The safe travel guidance for passengers can be found on gov.uk. Although the specific actions you will take may differ, it might be useful to consider how other businesses are preparing The next case study looks at some of the steps that the National Grid electricity system operator is taking to implement the guidance in an office environment. The National Grid has a vital role to make sure electricity gets to where it's needed, when it's needed, so control centre staff and some support staff have continued to work throughout the pandemic. Around 150 staff continue to access the office, together with other support staff. Shift work is normal, and this continues. Steps that have been taken to ensure a safe environment include increased cleaning of all areas, all main doors are open to reduce contact, wipes and hand sanitizer are provided, and reminder signs have been posted with information on hand washing and to point out one-way systems. In addition, screens have been erected between operational desks to ensure social distancing, and tape has been placed on the floors as a visual reminder for staff to keep their distance. Staff recognise that social distancing means everyday tasks such as accessing secure buildings will take longer. The gym, showers and restaurant have also been closed. Their next steps will include removing chairs from and revising the occupancy of meeting rooms and reducing desk capacity to allow for 2-metre distancing between colleagues. The National Grid formed their plan after speaking with their staff and identifying key areas for communal activities and closely followed government guidance and information. They've also been involved in best practice sharing across the electricity industry, with ideas being shared in forums. I also wanted to share another example with you. The following is a video of Asda's head office and what they're implementing to ensure it's a safe workplace for their employees.
Hello, I'm Hayley Tatum, the Chief People Officer at Asda. I'm here today in our Leeds home office, and normally this is a really vibrant, buzzy office with more than 2,000 associates coming here every day. But of course, since March, we've asked our colleagues to remain at home and do their work remotely, and they've done that really successfully and played their part. But now that lockdown is beginning to be slowly released, we're very carefully and gradually building rephasing plans to invite our colleagues back into this office as a place of work. We've already had the opportunity of learning from our stores and depots who've remained open throughout this C-19 emergency crisis. So we've been able to take all of that experience and bring it into our home office so that as we start building our plans, we're really clear on how to make the office space really safe. We've already started with a very slow and gradual phasing to invite our colleagues back in with social distancing measures, a one-way system, increased cleaning, PPE for everybody, as well as temperature checks on the way in. We're hoping that through this and continual learning, we'll be able to offer our colleagues a safe place to work and choices about how they blend their home working and returning to meet their colleagues and associates. We're learning together and we're continuing to make sure that Asda is a safe place to work and a safe place to shop.
Now every workplace is different.
Hello, I'm Hayley Tatum, the Chief People.
Now every workplace is different and each business will need to translate the guidance into specific actions according to the nature of their business, including the size and type of business, how it's organised, operated, managed and regulated. The Coronavirus Business Support blog provides further useful examples that you may wish to review. Industry bodies and unions may also be able to provide you with useful information as you think through and review your safer working plans. The government is working closely with business representative organisations and trade associations to support the national response to coronavirus. At gov.uk, you can find a list of some of the business representative organisations and trade associations that are providing coronavirus-related support for specific sectors and who you can speak with to get advice. Many of these websites also include sector-specific guidance and Q&A. Many of these organisations are also happy to respond to non-member queries related to coronavirus. So before we close today, Margaret and I will discuss some of the common questions that businesses are raising on the guidance. Margaret, welcome back. We've been asked if there's a maximum number of employees that should be in the office.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, that's a common question. Every office or contact centre is different, so we can't give specific numbers. But when thinking about the appropriate number of people in a building, you should think about ensuring that everyone who can continue to work at home and is supported to do so can do. For those coming to the office, you should maintain 2 metre social distancing. So this might involve changing layouts and removing desks, so that will affect the number of people. And think creatively about how you use space. Maintaining social distancing can also be achieved through management of people, such as flexible hours and rotas for how many people come into the office each day. And obviously, where 2 metre social distancing cannot be maintained, and this work must continue, think about the mitigations we talked about, such as installing partition screens and ensuring people work back to back or side to side rather than face to face. Also remember that social distancing applies to all parts of the business, not just the place where people spend most of their time. So include entrances, exits, break rooms, canteens, and similar places. These are often the most challenging areas to maintain social distancing and must be considered when developing your risk assessments.
That's great. Thank you for that really comprehensive answer. We've also had some questions on hot desking. Is this still allowed?
Yeah, I hope it came across in the presentation that you can still have hot desks, but you really should avoid them where possible. If they cannot be avoided, clean and sanitize the workspaces between occupants using them. You should look to assign desks to individuals rather than using shared desks if you can. And if they do need to be shared, they should be shared by the smallest possible number of people. You should also ensure employees clear their workspaces and remove waste and belongings from the work area at the end of a shift or at the end of using a hot desk. Uncluttered environments are easier to disinfect and maintain cleanliness and clear of clutter. Think about decluttering both shared and personal workspaces. This is an ideal time to think about that clear desk policy.
And on a related question, we've been asked if other shared and collaborative spaces like lounges, nooks and booths can still be used.
So the same rules will apply to all spaces. So as part of the risk assessment, you should think about how you can safely use these areas while maintaining distancing and hygiene. And in shared and common areas, you may need to reconfigure seating and tables to maintain spacing and reduce face-to-face interactions.
Thanks, Margaret. Our next question is, do I have to reopen my office if staff are successfully working from home?
Simple answer is no, you don't have to reopen your workplace because everyone who can work from home should work from home. It's only if they cannot do so that you need to think about reopening. Where your staff are working from home, remember to keep in touch with off-site workers on their working arrangements, including their welfare, mental and physical health, and personal security. Monitor their well-being and help them stay connected in the rest of the workforce, especially if the majority of their colleagues are on site, and make sure you provide the equipment people need in order to work from home safely and effectively.
So we'll take a few more questions before we close today. So one is, do I need to redesign my office layout to remove an open plan layout?
Every workplace layout and business will be different, so there's no one-size-fits-all approach here. It's all about implementing social distancing and any mitigations where these are needed. So if you do have an open plan section, think about using the floor tape or paint to mark areas to help workers keep to a 2-metre distance. Where it is not possible to move desks further apart, use markers to limit desk usage and maintain social distancing. Avoid the use of hot desks where possible, and where social distancing cannot be maintained, arrange people to work side by side or facing away from each other rather than face to face, or use screens to separate people from each other. Remember too to think about how people move through the open plan space. Think about using floor markings or a one-way flow at entry and exit points. Also think about distancing and hygiene for facilities such as printing stations, tea points and toilets. You may also have options to use your overall building space differently if occupancy levels are reduced and fewer visitors are using the space. You might think about repurposing space to allow social distancing to be implemented.
Good response. Thanks, Margaret. Our next question. My office building is shared. What do I need to think about? Who is responsible for managing shared areas?
You should really work collaboratively with your landlords and other tenants if your workplace is in a multi-tenant site or building. That will help you ensure consistency across the common areas, so receptions, staircases, any other shared facilities, canteens, locker rooms. The possibilities are endless, really. Give thought to what you can do to maintain social distancing, particularly on arrival and departure, and whether you can stagger arrival and departure times to reduce crowding into and out of the building.
Thanks, Margaret. So our final question for today is a question on meetings, and if meetings, and in particular large meetings, can actually take place.
So the guidance sets it out that to reduce transmission of the virus, you should reduce face-to-face meetings wherever possible. This includes internal meetings, but also meetings with customers, visitors and contractors. Think about using remote and digital solutions. Where physical meetings are absolutely necessary, you need to keep 2 metre distance throughout. Think about rearranging furniture and adding markings to help and hold meetings in well-ventilated rooms.
Thanks, Margaret. So that ends our question and answer session for today. Later this week, we'll circulate further information on popular questions that we've been asked across this series of webinars. A recording of the webinar and links to useful information will also be circulated to all participants later today. As we expect that this guidance will be updated over time, we do recommend that you should continue to check for updates at www.gov.uk/working safely, or to stay up to date with the latest information for businesses on coronavirus directly to your inbox. Why not sign up to the Coronavirus Business and Employers Bulletin from the government? You can also contact the government's business support helplines, and you can find all coronavirus business support information on gov.uk. So it just remains for me to thank our speaker, Margaret, and to thank you for joining us today. Goodbye.